from Hand Jam Crochet, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. We are going to talk about crochet cables. Now, I have teamed up with 3 other amazing designers to bring to you a whole collection of cable designs. And if it is still going, we're in spring 2022 and we're doing a crochet along. So all the details are below and we'd love for you to join us. If it's not that time, then don't worry. All the patterns and all the videos will always be available. So just check the description below and you'll see where to find everything that you'll need. So what are we going to make? I am going to show you how to make this square of crochet, which has got these cables running through the middle of it. And then once we learn how to do that, you can do whatever you like with it basically. But I have, or I'm going to show you how to transform 4 of them, put 4 of them together to make either a lovely wall hanging or a pillow cover. And the great thing about these, like squares and motifs, are really great in crochet because you can make them in any weight of yarn that you like, any colours that you like, and then you can make anything you like with them. So I think in a lighter weight yarn, this would be awesome as a blanket or a throw. So yeah, I just hope to inspire you and to teach you how to do crochet cables without being too scared of them. So let's have a look at what materials we'll need. For this project, I decided to use Billow, which is a bulky weight yarn from WeCrochet, and you get 120 yards in 100 grams, and it's a lovely soft cotton, really nice for homewares. And you can see that it goes thick and thin, it varies in its thickness, so it's a really lovely, authentic and rustic feeling yarn that's really nice to have around the home. And I used one hank, so 100 grams per square that I made. So if you're going to make a pillow like I did, you're going to need 8 because you need 8 squares. So you'll need 8 balls or hanks. And then if you're going to make the wall hanging, I did 4, so 4 balls. And then an extra one for some extra bits of tassels and fringing and whatever else you fancy really. If you're making the pillow as well, I realise this is not a big enough zip, but it's the only one I have to hand right now. You will probably need a zip if you want to add one. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a needle, a 5.5mm crochet hook on eye crochet hook, and then also perhaps some beads or extra little embellishments if you're going to do the wall hanging. So go grab all your kit, come back and we'll get going. So I think you may well be looking at this thinking, how on earth do we make diagonal cables, Hannah? Well, the answer is we don't. What we're going to do is make a triangle of increase followed by a triangle of decrease, and the cables run straight through the middle. So it's like a corner to corner square basically. So we increase at the ends of each row up until we get to here, and then we decrease at the ends of each row until we get to the final point here. And all we do is work this is a 9-stitch cable in the middle, and these are 5-stitch, a matching 5-stitch cable either side. So the point is that we're going to learn how to increase to make a square like this, and we're also going to learn these 2 different techniques of cables. Okay, so to begin, what we're going to do is pop a slip knot on the hook, and then we're going to chain 2. And then for row 1, what we need to do is work 3 half double crochet. So US terms, I'm going to talk throughout this tutorial, 3 half double crochet into the 2nd chain from the hook. So we're going to work them all into this one here. So 1, 2, and 3. And that's our first row complete. And so we're now going to turn. We'll turn at the end of every row. And what we're going to do is work a chain 1, and we do that at the beginning of each row, and that chain 1 doesn't count. That will never count. It will just give us the height that we need to begin the next row. And then what we'll do is work 2 half double crochet into that first stitch. So we're going to increase the amount of stitches we have by working extra stitches at the beginning and the end of each row. So we do 2 half double crochet into there, and then we're going to work 1 half double crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 half double crochet into the last stitch. So we began with 3 and we're going to end with 5. So that is our next row complete. And now we turn to begin row 3, and we work that chain 1 that we'll do at the beginning of every row, and we're going to do 2 half double crochet in the first stitch to begin our increase, and then we're going to work a half double crochet into the next 3, because that will then leave us 1 at the end there to do an increase on. So 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochets, 3 half double crochets, and then we're ready at the last stitch to work 2 into this very last one here. So now we have 7 stitches. And now we're ready to turn. I'm going to start to do a bit of cabling here now on this row. So we know we've got the idea of how we increase at either side now. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do 2 half double crochet in that first stitch. And then we're going to work a half double crochet in the next 2. So 1 stitch in each of those 2. So the next thing we need to do is work a back post stitch into the stitch 2 rows below. So we're going to do a back post treble stitch. So we need to wrap our yarn round twice to get ourselves ready. And we're not going to work it into this stitch below here. We're going to work it into the 3rd stitch here of this row, so 2 rows below. Now if this feels too tricky to start with, then don't worry, you can just do it around the stitch below, but this stitch here is the one we're going for. So what we're going to do is you're going to pop your hook around the back of that stitch there, so it goes through it. Now that feels all kinds of weird, I know, but you're going to pull it through the whole thing. Now I've caught that stitch there, and then you're going to work your stitch as you would normally. So yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and that makes that nice tall stitch for you. And it's on the 3rd stitch of that row that's got 5. And if you turn your work over, it looks something like that. Now we'll do lots more back post stitches, so don't worry about it. And then we're going to do a half treble in the next 2. So we know that this one is the stitch that we've just done. So you're going to need to get used to now in cables in thinking, right, that has already got a stitch allocated towards it. It hasn't got a stitch in it, but it's got a stitch allocated for it. So we're going to not skip this stitch because you've already done something for it. And then what we're going to do is work a half double crochet in the next 2. And then on the last stitch we're going to do our increase, and we're going to work 2 half double crochet in that stitch there. And that is our next row complete. And so we're now going to turn. We've increased, so we've now got 9 stitches, and now you can see that this stitch is sitting proud of the whole of the work. So we have started our cable already. And what we're going to do for row 5 is we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work our increase here at the end. So we're going to work 2 half double crochet there, and then we're going to half double crochet in the next 2. So 1 stitch in each of the next 2. And so now we're ready to continue our cable, and we're going to do what we call a front post treble in the stitch 2 rows below. So our treble is our long stitch with 2 wraps around, and we're going to go not in the one below, but the one below that. So we're going to search for this stitch here, and that means working a front post stitch. So a back post stitch you will go behind and find the stitch that way, and a front post stitch you will work it from the front, literally as it says. So then we need to do a front post double crochet around this stitch here, the cable that we began. So we're going to work that there. And now the pattern tells us that we need to do another front post treble stitch in 2 rows below. So not this row below us, but the one below that. And I will say that this beginning part is the trickiest part of the whole thing. Once you get this first section set up, you will be away. And so now we need to do a half double crochet in the next 2. So remember, we're not going to work into this one because that one's allocated for this stitch we've just done. And if you're ever unsure, just work, look in the pattern and see how many stitches you've got left to complete the row, and then just work back from there. So I know that we've got 3 more sets of instruction to work, so I need to do 3 stitches away from the end. So we're going to do a half double crochet in this one, a half double crochet in the next one, and then 2 half double crochet in the very last stitch. And that's row 5 complete. So now what we're going to do is turn our work again. And for row 6, you see that we have nothing to show for our work here at the back. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to work 2 half double crochet into that first one to get our increase ready. And then it tells us to work a half double crochet in the next 2. So the pattern tells us the next thing to do is 5 back post half double crochet stitches. So a back post half double crochet is like you work a regular half double crochet, but we're going to go around the back to scoop around the stitch. So we need to work out which stitch we need to get hold of. So this is the first one that we need here because we've already worked into the first 3. So we go around, pop your hook through, scoop that yarn through, and you're ready to complete your stitch. Now I do move my crochet an awful lot compared to most people. Some people are really good at doing this without flip-flopping around, but I find it much easier to see like literally where I'm going. So that's our first one done. And then the second stitch that we come to is nice and easy to see. It's part of the cable that we've already started here at the front. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to go through the back of the post here. We're going to pull it through, yarn over and complete your stitch. So that's 2. And the next one we come to is nice and easy to see. And that's the number 3. Again, number 4 is part of the cable we've already started. And then number 5 is one of these regular half double crochet from the row below. So we're going to yarn over, go through the back of the post, and finish our stitch there. And then the instructions tell us to do a half double crochet in the next 2 and then 2 in the last one. So just beware here because that looks like we're going to work into this stitch, but you're not because we've already allocated that post stitch to that one. So just be careful and make sure you count. When the rows are this short, you can kind of work backwards from the end anyway, can't you, and see how many you've got left to do. So a half double crochet in those 2, and then 2 half double crochet in this last one. And then you can turn your work and see what we've got. So yeah, you can see how everything in the center here is raised, and that looks exactly how it should. So to begin row 7, what we're going to do is just what we've done before. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to work 2 half double crochet into this first stitch to do our increase. And then we're going to work a half double crochet into this next stitch here. And now once we've done that, we are ready to start the main part of our cable, the one that runs along the center. So let me show you on this finished one where we are. So we've done this here, and now what we're going to do is start working this big cable here that goes across the middle. So that takes up 9 stitches. So from now on, the center 9 stitches are going to be for this cable. So we need to, the instruction tells us to skip the next 3 stitches. So we're going to look here, we're going to skip 1, 2 and 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then whatever we do, it's going to be into this next stitch here, which is already part of the cable that we've worked. So it tells us that we're going to work a front post treble around the next 3 stitches. So we're going to set up ready to work a treble stitch, and remember we're skipping these 3, and then we're going to work it around this stitch here as a front post treble. So round it goes. And that's what that should then look like. And then it needs to go into the next one. We're going to work a front post treble into the next one. So this is the second of the 3 that we're going to do. And then the third. So these ones are fairly easy to find. So that's the beginning of our cable, and you can see how it goes over and is now slanted. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work in front of these stitches, and we're going to fill in the gaps here because we skipped these 3, didn't we? And now we need to work into those 3 that we skipped. So what we're going to do is do a front post treble around the 3 skipped stitches. So get yourself ready with your loops over, and what you're going to search for is this stitch here. So we've got that 1, we've got 2, and we've got 3. So just before you start, make sure you know where your 3 stitches are. And in cables, especially in this bulkier yarn, it's really good to pull the stitches open and work out exactly where you're going to go before you go there. So yarn over twice, and then you're going to go right back over here to scoop around the front post of that stitch. And then you're going to work your stitch, and it will feel strange because it will pull and pucker everything, but I promise once we then work the next row, everything will even itself out. So that's the first one, and you see we worked in front of those stitches that we just made there. And then we're going to work the second one into this next stitch along here. So go through and use a front post stitch technique. And the important thing here is to give your stitches some space to breathe, because if you pull them too tight, then everything will pull right down and it won't be as nice and neat as it could be. So that's 2 of them worked. And then the third one is always a bit tricky to find, but it's there right in the middle. So there's the third post, front post stitch there. And there we've worked those front post stitches across the front of the other ones that we made. And now what it tells us to do is a front post double crochet, so just a shorter stitch around the next 3 stitches. So we've worked stitches into these. If you give it a yank, you'll figure out where you've already gone in that row. I know that's not terribly technical, but it works, hey? So then we've got 1, 2 and 3. So here 1, 2, 3 stitches to do a front post double crochet around. So we go 1, and then 2, and then 3. And then it tells us we need to do a half double crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 half double crochet in the very last stitch to complete that row. And so now you'll see running along that center, we've got 9 stitches there this main center cable. So you'll always have 9 stitches across the middle now that will be for that center cable. So now to begin row 8, let's look, because we're on the wrong side of our work. So you've got all sorts of funny ridges and bits and pieces here, and this is the wrong side, and it doesn't matter at all. All you want is the texture to pop out on the front of your work. So you'll always need to remember that the wrong side of your work, you're going to work back post stitches, because then that will give you the texture on your right side. So we begin by chaining 1, and then we're going to work 2 half double crochet into that very first stitch, and then a half double crochet into the next 2, and then that brings us to our 9 stitches of our center cable, which are really tricky to see from this angle. You can see the first 3 nice and easily. So what it tells us now is we need to do a back post half double crochet in the next 9. So let's go ahead and do that. So remember, a back post scoops around the back of the stitch, so that's 1, and these ones are really easy to see, figure out where they're going to be. 2, and then 3. And so the next of those 9 are in this section here that looks very bizarre. And now the question I get asked most about cables is, where do you do them? How do you do them? In sequence or not? Because they're crossed over, aren't they? So the answer is in sequence as they come to you. So the next one that we will be doing is this stitch here. And we're going to work the 3 that we did here, and then what we're going to do is then we're going to work the 3 that are underneath it. So you'll have a long line of 6, and I think the thing that lots of people get muddled up with is which order to do these stitches in when you've got things crossed over. So you always work this front section of stitches first, and then you'll work the back section of stitches. So let's do that to make it make more sense, hopefully. So we're going to do a back post half double crochet in that first one, and again it does flip-flop about a bit, so don't worry about that. That's the second one. This is the third one. And now what we need to do is just manipulate this so that we can get to those 3. You're still going to do a back post. The technique is exactly the same, but getting hold of the stitches is sometimes tricky. So that's the first of those 3, the second of those 3. There's always one that hides and is trickier than the others, and then the last of them. So that's 9 back post half double crochet in total. And then we're going to half double crochet in the next 2. And now bear in mind, this is easy to think you're going to go into this stitch, but you're not. That one's already been done. That's that back post you've just done. And so we're going to half double crochet in the next 2. And then 2 half double crochet in this last one. And as you see, not much to show from this side, but turn it over and we've got a lovely looking cable emerging. Okay, so row 9, we're going to go nice and swiftly with the first stitches. We'll chain 1, we'll work our increase of 2 half double crochet, and then we half double crochet in the next 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And now this is obviously our right side, and it's a slightly different version. We've got 2 right side rows to learn. So we've learnt the first one that we did back here, and this one we're going to work, rather than skipping at the beginning of the row, we're going to work into these 3 stitches now. So we've got 1, 2 and 3 that we need to work into, and we're going to do a front post double crochet into each of those. So there's our first front post double crochet, Here's our second one. And there's the third. Now that stitch is sometimes, let's do that again, that stitch is sometimes tricky to find because it wants to tuck underneath everything. But there we go, that's where it sits. So now what we need to do is to skip the next 3 stitches, which you can see is a nice easy amount to find there. And then we're going to work into the next 3. So we're going to do a front post treble stitch into these 3 here. So there's our first one. Here's our second. And there's our third one. And then what we need to do is, like we did on the other version of this row, is go back across the front of our stitches and work in these 3 now. So 1, 2 and 3 now get a front post treble stitch in them too. So this again feels strange because you're going to twist your work and work over the top of it. But you're going to do a front post treble stitch around that one. And then the second one here. And then this third one. So I think cables, it's just a case of finding where to put your stitches. The actual stitches are really straightforward, but it's figuring out where they go. And then we're going to work a half double crochet in the next 3, and you can see already that we've worked in these because our stitches are pulling over to this side already. So we've got 1, 2 and 3 here towards the end. So 1, 2 and 3, and then 2 half double crochet in the last stitch. And there's our row 9 complete. So now we're ready to turn and work row 10. And it's really similar to the previous wrong side row that we did. You're going to chain 1. We're going to make our increase here of 2 half double crochet. We're going to work a half double crochet into the next 4. And then we need to work a back post half double crochet into the next 9, so that's for our center cable. And you see here that we have the crossed over stitches already. So the working in sequence, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 and then 4, 5 and 6. So if you're ever in doubt, pull them apart, pull them apart to see where the crossover happens and therefore what the sequence of your stitches are. So here we have a back post in that first one we come to. The second one. And the third one. And then once we've done those 3, we now know we need to go searching underneath for these 3 stitches here. So a back post, half double crochet around that one. And the next one, and this last one there. I always think of them in sets of 3 because you know that that's how many there are before you get to the next part of the cable. And then there's 3 sat nicely there and easily for us to find. So a back post, half double crochet around each of those. And there's 3. And now we need to do a half double crochet into the next 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then that takes us to the very last one, which we will work 2 half double crochet in to do our increase. And that's the end of row 10. So now, believe it or not, you know everything that you need to know to make this centre cable. So we're going to carry on increasing at the sides, and then what we're going to do is repeat the front or the right side row that we did on row 7. So for row 11, we're going to chain 1 and work 2 half double crochet into that first stitch. And then we're going to work a half double crochet in the next 5. And now we're going to repeat the version on row 7 that we did of this cable. So we do that by skipping the first 3 and then working a front post treble into the next 3. So they're slightly different to find, but they are there. So skip these 3 and then a front post treble into the next 3. So we have 1, and 2, and then 3. And then we're going to work back across the fronts of those stitches to fill in the gap and work the 3 that we skipped here. So again, this will make your work crease up a bit, but don't worry about it, it will sort itself out. So in that one there, and the second one that we come to, and then the third of these skipped stitches, which you do have to search for, but it's there in that middle. And then we're going to do a front post double crochet into the next 3. So these 3 stitches here, because this has already been worked into. And then we're ready to half double crochet into 5. And then 2 half double crochet into the last. Okay, so row 12 is a wrong side row, and it's exactly the same as the last 2 wrong side rows we did, but we need to work more stitches here because we've increased. So that's the only difference. So we're going to work 2 half double crochet into that first one, and then we've got 6 half double crochet to work here. And then we're ready to work our back post half double crochet in the 9 of our cable. So hopefully this should get easier and easier the more rows of this you do. I'm trying my best to keep it as still as I can, but it makes you realise when you film yourself doing stuff that you actually move an awful lot when you crochet, or I do anyway. So there's those 9 back post half double crochets, and then we're ready to work to the end, do a half double crochet in 6, and then we'll do 2 half double crochet in the last stitch to do our increase. And that's the end of row 12. So now row 13 is where we begin our 2 side cables. So let's just have a look where they begin and how they begin. So row 13 is going to drop down stitches, do front post stitches in what looks like 4, but it's actually 5 because we've got one hidden in the middle. So let's show you how to do that now. So we're going to begin just like we always do. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to increase in this first one by working 2 half double crochet stitches in it. And then what we're going to do is a half double crochet in the next stitch, and that gets us to the point where we're ready to start working this side cable that we're doing, and it's a small cable that's over 5 stitches. And so we're going to do a front post treble 2 rows below. So this is tricky to find sometimes exactly where you want to be, but we're going to work it into these 5 stitches 2 rows below. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this is the one we want to go for this stitch here. So yarn over twice and then go down and do a front post stitch into that one there. And then you're going to do the same in the next one, 2 rows below, that one there. And then we're going to work a half double crochet into the next stitch of the row that we're working on. So make sure that you allocate these 2 stitches for the ones we've just done, and then work it into the next one. So this is going to be in the center of this new cable that we're working. So that's a half double crochet there. And then we're going to work another front post treble stitch into the next one 2 rows below. So the way that's easy to find, that's easier to find, shall I say, because all we do is look where we've done the previous front post stitch there on that row, skip the next one and then work into the next one. So that one goes down there. And the same into the next one, a front post treble into 2 rows below. And that's the beginning of that side cable of 5 stitches that we have there. And then what we're going to do is work a half double crochet into the next stitch, and then it will bring us to our 9 for our center cable. So again, make sure that you allocate these 2 stitches here for the cable that we've already done here, and then work a half double crochet into this next one here. So each cable should have a half double crochet in between them. You should never have a cable going straight into the next cable. So we have 1 stitch, a set of 5 cable, 1 stitch, set of 9 cable, 1 stitch, set of 5, 1 stitch. So now we're ready to work this right side row of this center cable, and we're on the row that goes straight into these first 3 stitches. So a front post double crochet into 3, which I find are the trickiest ones to find, these 3, because they're really tucked underneath. There we go, and that pulls those stitches forward. And then we're ready to go skip the next 3 and a front post treble into the next 3. And then we're going to work across the front of those stitches and do our 3 here in the middle that we've skipped. So a front post treble into each of those. then we're ready to work a half double crochet into the next stitch that we come across, and that then gets us ready to work our other 5 cable, which is exactly the same as the one that we just did the other side, except you're going to work it into 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 stitches, 2 rows below. So our first front post treble goes into this stitch here, and then the second one into the next one along, and our next stitch is going to be a half double crochet into the next stitch of that row that we come across, and then 2 more front post trebles, 2 rows below. So remember, skip that one in the middle because that's the one we've just used in the row below. And then our final front post stitch. And then we have a half double crochet in this one here, and then we finish off with 2 half double crochet in the last one. There we go. So now we have a center 9 stitch cable, and we've got 2 5 stitch cables either side. Okay, so now we're ready to work row 14, which is our wrong side, and you'll be happy to know that it's very, very similar, because for these 5 cables here, we don't do anything special. We don't need any back post stitches for these at all. We're just going to work half double crochets into them. So we're basically going to work half double crochets up until your 9 of the center, a back post half double crochet into each of those, and then half double crochets along the rest of it, remembering our increases at either end. So let's just do one of these rows together. We're going to work 2 half double crochet into this first stitch, and then we've got 8 half double crochet to do. So there's 8, and then we need to do our back post half double crochet in 9. So wherever you come across your stitch, work them in sequence. And that's number 9. And now you're ready to work your 8. And then 2 half double crochet in this last stitch. And we turn and we can see our beautiful cables coming to life. So now for row 15, we need to begin, as we always do, with a chain 1 and 2 half double crochet into the first stitch. And then we're going to a half double crochet into 3. And then we're ready to do the next part of this cable of 5 that we have here. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, so 1, 2 and 3, and then we're going to do a front post treble around this next stitch 2 rows below. So it's really easy to find because it's the part of the cable that we've already worked. So the wording in the pattern, or the way that any of these cable patterns are worded, is sometimes really tricky because it's saying around the stitch 2 rows below and da-di-da-di-da. It's really tricky, but in practice you're just aiming for this stitch that you've already done to form the cable. It's like a bit like dot to dot really. You're just joining up the dots here and joining up the stitches. So we're going to work a front post treble stitch around that one there, and then a front post treble around this next one. And now the next thing we need to do is whereas we've worked in front of the stitches before, what we now need to do is work behind these two stitches, because what we want to do is fill in the gap of that middle that we have here. So I would turn onto its side and count your stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. They're the 5 stitches of this cable. So we're going to work into the 3rd stitch you come along of that cable. And you're going to do a half double crochet into that stitch, and it will then sit behind those stitches that you've just made and almost make it disappear. And then the final step in this cable is that we're going to work across all of this, across the front, and we're going to work stitches into these 2 that we created in the 2 rows before. So you're going to work a front post treble into this stitch first, and then into the next one, which sometimes tries to hide once you've done that one. And there's that row for that cable of 5 done. And then we're going to half double crochet in the next, but just be careful here because you need to look, right, this one is already worked into, because that's directly underneath where we've put that cable stitch. So it's this next stitch here that we need to work into. And then that then brings us to our cable of 9. And what we're going to do for this cable of 9 is a row that we already know. You're going to skip these 3, and then you're going to work a front post treble into the next 3. So as you see, there's only 2 right side rows that you need to learn for each cable. The wrong side rows are the same, but the front side, the right side, they're slightly different. The same stitches, but in a different order. So there's those 3, and now we're going to work across the front of those again and fill in the gaps for the 3 that we've skipped. So here we are. One, 2 and 3, and then we're going to do a front post double crochet into the next 3, and then a half double crochet in the next, before we're then ready to work exactly the same as we did here into our 5 cable here. So we're going to skip 3, 1, 2 and 3, and then we're going to aim for this one down here that we did, this front post stitch, and do a front post treble in this one. And then in the next one. So then remember, we need to work behind. So we're going to do a half double crochet into the 3rd stitch of this cable. So we've got 1, 2 and 3. And then we're going to work across the front of these stitches again to work into these 2 that we have here. And then we need to do a half double crochet in the next 3. So remember to think about where this cable ends, so it's on this stitch, and then we need to work a half double crochet in 3. And then 2 half double crochet in the last stitch. And so now we turn to do row 16, which is a really easy increase and wrong side row that we already know how to do. We're going to chain 1, you're going to pop your increase of 2 stitches here at the end. And then we're going to work a half double crochet into each stitch up until the 9 center cable. Now it feels a bit higgledy-piggledy across the 5 cable there, but just take it steady and go in sequence. And so now we've arrived at our 9 cable, and as you probably have already guessed, we're going to do our back post half double crochet in the next 9. And then we half double crochet into each to the very last stitch, where we then put our increase for this end. And then we work our 2 half double crochet in the last one, and that's the end of row 16. So the next thing to do is to work a repeat of rows 13 to 16, because they are like the set pattern for our cable square now. And the only thing you need to do is make sure that you increase properly at the end each side. And all that will then do is then on the next row you'll have more stitches to complete until you get to your cable. So if you go ahead, make sure you get yourself a copy of the pattern, because it's a lot easier to read, obviously, than to perhaps keep watching back what I've done. So rows 13 to 16, repeat those, and I'll meet you back here, because then we'll be ready to decrease and start going towards the point at the end. Fabulous. So now we are here at the end of row 20, and this is as wide as our square is going to be. And so what we now need to do is start decreasing and working rows to get to that top point. So if I show you here on this finish colour example, we are here and we're going to work towards this point here. And now the thing to note is that your cables will work exactly the same. You know exactly what to do for these cables. You've done them up until this point. The only difference is that we are going to decrease at either side to bring it to that single point at the end. So don't worry about this section at all. You already know what you're going to do, but let's do a few rows together and see how it works out. Okay, so for row 21, we already know everything we need to know for the middle section. The only difference we're going to have is at the ends here, we're going to join 2 stitches together and make 1, and that will decrease the amount of stitches that we have across. We're going to decrease at the beginning and we're going to decrease at the end, and that will make this next row 2 stitches shorter than the previous one, and that will be true of every single row that we work from now on. So the way that we decrease is by working what's called a half double crochet 2 together, which is a great big mouthful, but all it basically means is we're going to chain 1 to begin with. We're going to begin a half double crochet in this stitch, And then whereas you would normally yarn over and complete your stitch, what we're going to do is going to yarn over and we're going to start another stitch in the next stitch. So then you yarn over and pull through, and then all we need to do is yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops. And that has created 1 stitch out of 2 from the previous row. So that's all there is to a half double crochet 2 together. And we're going to do that at the beginning and the end of each row now. And then you'll see in the pattern it tells you just to work the plain sailing as we've done before. So we're going to do half double crochet stitches up until we get to our first cable. And then when we get to the cable, we just work our 5 stitch cable that we already know. We pop our half double crochet in between, and then we're ready to start working the next 9 stitch cable. Work that half double crochet in between, then our second 5 stitch cable, and then we work a half double crochet in each stitch up until the last 2. And then in these last 2 we do another half double crochet 2 together. So we're going to start as if we're going to make a half double crochet, yarn over and then start a half double crochet in the next stitch, and then yarn over and pull through everything. Okay, so all we need to do now is carry on decreasing 1 stitch either side and keep the cabling section in the middle the same up until row 30. So if you go ahead and work up until row 30 in the pattern and then pop back and I'll show you how to do the last 9 rows. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of row 31, and all we're going to do is work a chain 1 and half double crochet 2 together, as we have been for the beginning and end of each row now. And then all we need to do is just ignore the fact that there's a cable there now. So we're going to half double crochet in the next 4, and that will bring us to our center cable of 9. And then you just work your center cable of 9 as you would normally, and then you half double crochet in 4 and then half double crochet 2 together. And so row 32 is a nice easy one. We decrease at the beginning and at the end, half double crochet up until your 9 cable, and then work your back post stitches as you would normally for that. And then row 33, we need to decrease at the beginning and then work a half double crochet in the next 2. Then we work our 9 stitch cable as we would normally, and then similarly the other side we work 2 half double crochet and then decrease at the end. And then for row 34 we decrease at the beginning, and then we've only got 1 stitch before we get to our back post cable section. And for row 35 we just need to decrease with a half double crochet 2 together at the beginning, and then we're straight off into our 9 stitch cable, and then at the end of that you decrease for the last 2 stitches. And now for row 36 we are going to half double crochet 2 together at the beginning, and then you'll notice that that already takes us into that 9 stitch cable. So then all we need to do is work a back post half double crochet in 7. So we're now starting to decrease the amount of stitches that are in that center cable. So that's 7 back post stitches, and then we need to half double crochet in the last 2 there. And now row 37, we're going to decrease at the beginning with a half double crochet 2 together, and then all we're going to do is just front post double crochet in the next 5. So make sure you figure out exactly where they are. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then that will leave us 2 to decrease at the end for. So and then half double crochet 2 together. For row 38 we're going to decrease at the beginning, we're going to back post half double crochet in 3, and then half double crochet 2 together. And you can see we're almost there. We're on row 39. We're going to chain 1 and decrease our first 2 stitches together. Then we're going to just work 1 front post double crochet stitch in the next, and then decrease over the last 2 stitches. And so for our very final row we need to chain 1 and then half double crochet 3 together. So exactly the same concept as doing 2 together, but then you just add another one on there at the end, and then yarn over and pull through everything. And there we have our finished square. And so the next thing you need to do, as you can see it wants to go wonky, is to give it a really good proper block. And I would do that. I did that with all of my individual squares before I then joined them, and then I blocked them again just to make sure that everything is as neat and as tidy as it possibly can be. So for the cushion cover, I made 8 of these squares, 4 for the front, 4 for the back, and I joined them with a whip stitch, and I'll pop a link to a little video about a whip stitch if you'd like to take a look. The thing that I wanted to say though is that I had the final stitch, this last row, in the centre of the cushion, because that makes it look a lot neater, or I found it did anyway. And similarly, if you want to make the wall hanging, just make the 4 of them and then whip stitch them together. And then I'll also put a link to another little video about tassels and how to embellish and how to put rods on the wall hanging. So do go and have a look at those. I really hope you've enjoyed this. I know it is quite complex, it is tricky crochet, but it is so worth it, and the technique you can use for any kind of crochet cable, because now you know how to do back post, front post, you know how to cross over your stitches, you know how to work in front, how to work in behind. So you know so much information now. Do come and find me. I'm Hand Jam Crochet anywhere that you'd expect to find me. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.